My name is Nathaniel Langford, but everyone who knows me professionally calls me Nate. For the past 14 years, I've worked as a senior forensic audio analyst at the National Center for Audio Forensics in Washington, D.C., a federal contracted lab that verifies voice authenticity for court cases, counterintelligence operations, and historical preservation projects. My annual salary is $138,500, not including hazard pay for classified contract work. I don't do interviews. I don't testify unless subpoenaed. My job is to listen, to isolate a cough in the background of a ransom call, detect the synthetic lag in a deepfake threat, or confirm whether a 1963 civil rights speech was spliced post-recording. Sound doesn't lie. People do. And I've spent my life learning the difference. I live alone in a 1920s craftsman-style house in Tacoma Park, Maryland, 2,800 square feet of oak floors, built-in bookshelves, and a wraparound porch that creaks in the summer humidity. I bought it back in 2011 for $412,000 after a decade of saving, working overtime, and living in a studio apartment near Fort Totten. It's the same house I lived in with my grandmother, Eleanor Langford, from the time I was 6 until I was 12. My parents died in a head-on collision on I-95. Black ice, wrong lane, gone in 0.8 seconds, according to the police report. After that, Nana took me in. She was a retired librarian from the Boston Public Library, sharp as a scalpel, with a voice like warm honey over gravel. She taught me to read at 4, to question authority at 6, and to never trust a man who won't look you in the eyes when he makes a promise. Garrett Langford, my father's half-brother, was that man. He showed up twice a year like clockwork, Christmas Eve with a fruitcake and a too-tight smile, and Easter Sunday with a pastel tie and questions about when the house would sell. He never liked that Nana left everything to me in her will, even though I was just a kid. He called it emotional manipulation by a senile woman. What he didn't know was that Nana had recorded a cassette tape in 1981, when I was 10, and hidden it inside a hollowed-out copy of The Secret Garden on the attic shelf. I found it by accident during a storm in 2006, years after the so-called burial. The tape begins with her voice, calm and certain. "Nate, if they'd tell you I'm gone, don't believe them. Not until you hear it from my own lips or find this tape. Garrett's eyes go cold when he lies. Watch for it." I kept it in a fireproof safe under my bed. Never played it for anyone. It was mine. Officially, Eleanor Langford died on March 14, 1983, at age 68. Cause of death: suicide by barbiturate overdose. Closed casket, private service, no autopsy. Garrett produced a death certificate signed by a now-deceased physician in Anne Arundel County. The probate court accepted it. The house was transferred to Garrett's name under emergency estate liquidation. I was placed in foster care for 2 years before aging out of the system. By the time I tracked down property records in 2010, the trail was cold. Paper trails shredded, digital archives purged. Or so I thought. I installed smart home devices in 2019, not for convenience, but for security. After a break-in during the pandemic, I integrated 4 Amazon Echo units with local audio buffering enabled. I configured them to retain 72 hours of raw .wav files in an encrypted partition on my NAS drive, separate from CloudSync. I also set up a daily cron job to hash and timestamp all logs. Paranoia? Maybe. But in my line of work, you learn that silence can be weaponized. Then, on Tuesday, April 8, 2025, at precisely 3:17 a.m., my Echo Dot in the hallway, normally silent at night, emitted a soft chime. Not the weather update, not a timer, a voice. Clear, unhurried, with that inexplicable Boston lilt. "Sarah's waitin' in the attic." I froze. Sarah was my mother's name. She'd been dead for 46 years. And the voice, every micro-inflection, the slight lisp on the S, the way it lingered on waitin', was Nana's. I pulled the NAS logs immediately. The trigger wasn't a cloud command. It was a local anomaly, a 2.3-second audio fragment injected into the device's firmware buffer from an unknown source. I ran a spectral analysis, cross-referenced it against the 1981 cassette. The waveform alignment was 99.8% identical. Not a clone, not a glitch. A replication so precise it could only come from a master source, someone who'd preserved her voice intentionally or not. I drove to Cedar Pines Behavioral Health in Frederick that same afternoon under the guise of a records audit for a federal case. Using a forged NCAF letterhead, I requested archival patient logs for Eleanor Wainwright, her maiden name. The clerk, hesitant but compliant, pulled a file. Buried in discharge notes from 2022 was a line. Patient E.W., DOB 9/12/1915, expired 11/3/2022. Next of kin, Garrett Langford. She'd been alive for 39 more years. Garrett hadn't buried her in 1983. He'd erased her. And now somehow, she was speaking through my Alexa, pointing me back to the attic, to Sarah, to the truth. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day.
My blood ran cold, but my mind was clear. In forensic audio analysis, we're trained to separate emotional resonance from acoustic reality. A voice can sound like your dead mother, but if the formant frequencies don't align with known samples, it's mimicry. But this wasn't mimicry. This was Eleanor Langford. Her vocal tract length, her glottal pulse, the subtle tremor in her A vowel from decades of smoking unfiltered Camels. The evidence was irrefutable. She had been alive long after her official death, and someone had preserved her voice well enough to trigger a modern smart speaker. The only question was how, and why now? I spent the next 72 hours in a controlled isolation protocol. No social media, no calls to old family friends. I activated my clean room protocol, a Faraday-shielded basement office where I keep analog backups of all sensitive data. First, I digitized the 1981 cassette at 192 kHz per 24-bit resolution. Then ran it through our lab's proprietary voice print engine, Vox 9. It flagged 3 unique biometric markers. One, a 14 Hz glottal jitter consistent with early vocal fold paresis. 2, a Boston-born R vowel shift, for example, car pronounced as ka. And 3, a habit of elongating final consonants when issuing warnings. The Alexa audio matched all 3. Next, I reverse-engineered the Echo Dot's firmware. Using a hardware debugger, I extracted the audio buffer from April 8th. Hidden in metadata was a UUID tied to an Amazon developer account registered in 2018 under the name Langford Heritage Archives. I cross-referenced it with Maryland business filings. Bingo. Langford Historical Trust, LLC. Garrett's vanity nonprofit, incorporated in 2017 with a stated mission to preserve the Langford family legacy. He'd been uploading digitized family recordings to a private Alexa skill, likely for his own nostalgic playback. But he'd accidentally enabled public inference on a test model, and my device on the same Wi-Fi network as an old smart speaker he'd gifted me in 2019 had pulled the voice profile during a routine update. He didn't mean to broadcast Nana's voice, but he'd archived it, and in doing so, he'd left a digital tombstone. I contacted Dr. Lena Park, a former NCAF colleague now serving as a digital evidence consultant for the Maryland Attorney General's office. I sent her the Vox 9 report, the Cedar Pines discharge record, and a redacted copy of the cassette transcript. Her reply came in 18 minutes. This isn't just fraud. It's elder confinement,
forged death certificates, and illegal asset seizure under MD Code 8301. But you need the original power of attorney, the one Nana mentioned on the tape. I remembered it. August 1982. Nana had me sit at the kitchen table while Dr. Miriam Cho notarized a document naming me and her as co-decision makers for Nana's care should she become incapacitated. I was 11. I signed with a wobbly cursive N. I'd assumed it was lost when Garrett cleared the house, but Nana was meticulous. If she hid the tape in the secret garden, she'd hide the POA nearby. I tore the attic apart for 2 days. On the third morning, behind a loose baseboard beneath the eaves, I found a rusted lockbox. Inside, the original notarized power of attorney dated August 17, 1982, filed under Maryland's durable POA statute, meaning it remained valid even after alleged incapacity. And beneath it, a faded photo of my mother, Sarah, holding me as a baby. On the back, in Nana's handwriting, she never got to say goodbye. But I did, and I'm still here. That was the second vector. The first was voice. The second was law. I hired Marcus Ree, a civil litigation attorney who specialized in historical fraud. His fee? $7,500 flat. His advice? Don't confront him. Let him keep believing the past is buried. Attend his gala, let him stand on that stage and talk about honoring legacy. Then hand the Attorney General's office a sealed affidavit 10 minutes before he speaks. They've been investigating him for suspicious historic preservation grants. I began the trap. I updated my LinkedIn to show consulting on heritage audio projects. I liked Garrett's posts about the gala. I even sent a congratulatory email. Proud to see the Langford name honored. He replied within the hour. You've grown into a decent man, Nate. Maybe we can reconcile. I told him I'd try to make it to the event. Meanwhile, I prepared the payload. I burned the 1981 cassette to a high-fidelity mini DVD with time-stamped metadata. I printed 3 copies of The Power of Attorney, the Cedar Pines discharge record, and the Vox 9 analysis. I placed them in a black folio with a USB drive containing the raw audio files. And I rehearsed my lines, not for drama, but for precision. I would say only what was necessary. No accusations, just facts delivered in the same tone I'd use to brief a federal judge. Because Garrett's fatal error wasn't just hiding Nana. It was assuming silence meant surrender. And in my world, silence is just the space between signals, waiting to be decoded.
October 18, 2025 was unseasonably warm for Baltimore, 68 degrees at dusk, with a light mist hanging over the Patapsco River. I arrived at the Baltimore Museum of Industry at 6:42 p.m., 48 minutes before the gala's scheduled start. I wore a charcoal Tom Ford suit, white shirt, no tie, respectful but not deferential. My shoes were polished, my hair trimmed, my expression neutral. In my right hand, the black folio. In my left, a small Bluetooth audio transmitter linked to my phone. The venue was a cathedral of industrial nostalgia, exposed brick, towering cranes, and steel catwalks strung with Edison bulbs. The Langford Gala occupied the main hall, where 300 guests in cocktail attire mingled beneath a banner reading, "Preserving Maryland's Legacy." Garrett stood near the stage, shaking hands, accepting compliments, his silver hair gleaming under the lights. He wore a navy tuxedo with a gold Langford Historical Trust pin. He looked like a man who'd already won. I didn't approach him. I found a table in the back, near a pillar, and waited. At 7:25, the MC introduced Maryland's Attorney General, who gave a brief speech on historic integrity. Then came Garrett's turn. As he stepped to the podium, I texted the AG's aide, "Affidavit delivered. Proceed as discussed." Garrett began with practiced humility. My grandmother, Eleanor Langford, taught me that history isn't just dates, it's dignity. A few guests nodded.
For 40 years, I've worked to honor her memory, to protect the artifacts she loved. He gestured to a display case containing Nana's old spectacles and a copy of The Secret Garden. This gala isn't about me, it's about truth. That's when I stood. I walked down the center aisle, heels clicking on the concrete floor. Murmurs rose. Garrett's smile faltered. "Nate, what do you—" I didn't answer. I stepped onto the stage, nodded to the sound engineer, pre-briefed by the AG's office, and plugged my transmitter into the main console. "Before you continue," I said, voice calm, amplified through the room speakers, "there's a voice you claimed was silenced in 1983. But it's not gone. It's been waiting." I pressed play. The opening notes of a 1940s radio jingle, Nana's favorite, filled the hall. Then her voice, clear as dawn. "Nate, if they tell you I'm gone, don't believe them." The room gasped. A woman dropped her wine glass. Garrett's face went ashen. I let the tape play for 45 seconds, long enough for everyone to hear the warning, the love, the fear. Then I cut it. Eleanor Langford did not die in 1983. She lived until November 3, 2022, confined under the alias Eleanor Wainwright at Cedar Pines Behavioral Health. Her death certificate is a forgery. Her burial was a fiction. I displayed the power of attorney. This document, signed in 1982, named me, her grandson, as co-decision maker for her care. Garrett Langford bypassed it, seized $2.3 million in assets, and erased her from existence. I turned to Garrett. "You archived her voice for your heritage project. You even uploaded it to Alexa. But you never listened to what she said. She told me, 'Garrett's eyes go cold when he lies.' Look at him now." He was trembling. "This is slander. You can't prove—" "I already did. The Attorney General's office has seized your cloud archives. The Maryland Medical Board is investigating the forged death certificate. And your nonprofit? Its 501c3 status is being revoked for fraudulent activity." Then I delivered the final blow. "You said this gala is about truth, so here it is. You didn't preserve her legacy. You stole it. And you left her to die alone while you gave speeches in tuxedos." I turned to the audience. Her real legacy was this: "Tell Nate I'm still here." And today, I did. I walked off stage as security escorted Garrett away. No cheers, no applause, just silence. Thick, heavy, and final.
Garrett Langford was indicted on October 22, 2025, on 7 counts: elder abuse, forgery, fraudulent conveyance, and making false statements to a government agency. His Langford Historical Trust was dissolved by court order. The $2.3 million in misappropriated assets, including my childhood home, was returned to a newly established Eleanor Langford Memorial Trust, with me as sole trustee. I've since converted the house into a nonprofit residence for elderly women who've lost their families, named Still Here, in honor of Nana's final message. The Alexa incident. Amazon confirmed the voice profile was pulled from Garrett's private skill. They issued a statement about developer oversight and updated their firmware. But I keep the Echo Dot unplugged now. Some voices shouldn't be summoned by algorithm. I still work at NCAF, though I've taken on fewer classified contracts. Last month, I donated Nana's cassette, The Power of Attorney, and her spectacles to the Maryland Center for History and Culture. They're displayed under glass with a simple plaque: Eleanor Langford, 1915 to 2022. She was here. She mattered. As for me, I sleep better. Not because Garrett was punished. Justice is procedural, not cathartic. But because Nana's truth is no longer buried. It's archived, verified, shared. I've learned that betrayal doesn't always come with a knife. Sometimes it comes with a death certificate, a closed casket, and 40 years of silence. But silence isn't absence, it's latency. And in the right hands,
Armed with evidence, patience, and the courage to press play, it becomes the loudest testimony of all.